Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Rocky Top Insider Diamond Pass podcast here on this Monday, March 24th edition. It's the sheriff's birthday, Peyton Manning's birthday here on this fine Monday, March 24th. We're going to recap Tennessee baseball's series win over Alabama in Tuscaloosa this past weekend, winning games 2 and 3 to get the series dub on a Thursday through Saturday series down there in Tuscaloosa, the Vols' first true road games of the season. And after a tough series opener, they were able to bounce back and get wins in games 2 and 3. But a lot to discuss in Tennessee's second SEC series of the season. The Vols remain number one, not consensus number one, though. As the NCBWA has Tennessee at number 3, but Tennessee number 1 in all 4 of the other polls. To break it all down with me is Ryan Schumpert, as always. Ryan, how you doing on this Monday?
I'm doing well. Glad to be back on here. And yeah, no, the series was kind of the inverse of last year's Alabama series,
Yep.
where Tennessee won the first game and lost the next two. So Tennessee kind of turns the tide, and a week that started out a bit rocky for them and ends up as a good one.
Yeah, and it was I remember reflecting back on last year's series, Tennessee dominated game 1, and then games 2 and 3 were close. So it's the complete inverse because games 1 and 2 were close this time around, and then game 3 was absolute domination from Tennessee. So the blowout happened on game 3 this time around rather than game 1. Both were Tennessee wins, of course, but yeah, it was an intriguing series, and Alabama's a really good team. I think Alabama's better than people still realize. I know they had the number 12 ranking, only had one loss entering the weekend, but this is a top half SEC team, and that's saying a lot in baseball, given the fact that double-digit SEC teams are ranked every week. So I would think you could argue this team is better than Florida, given how the Gators have looked in their second SEC weekend. I don't I don't know who won that Georgia series, but I know it was split, and Florida had gotten beat by like 15 runs in game 2. I didn't check who won game 3.
I thought Georgia swept. I could be wrong about that.
Oh,
They
maybe they did
definitely
sweep.
won game 3.
Okay. I think you're right, though. I think they did sweep. Game 1 was close. Florida maybe just
Yes.
lost by little.
And I think Georgia
Blowout in
killed them
game
the next
2.
two games.
Okay, there you go. So, yeah, Florida 0-6 in SEC play. Feels like Bama's the better team. Tennessee had their hands full in Tuscaloosa. And then go back to the midweek last week, an ETSU team that, caught those midweek games will happen. I don't think we have to dive in too much on that, Ryan, but just to kind of put that away because I know it sent some fans into a frenzy of, oh, this team isn't good. Oh, how do you lose to an ETSU team? Well, guys, ETSU hits homers almost as good as anyone in the country. They got some real dudes on the team. When you're throwing a Johnny Holstaff and on a midweek, things like this happen, and it was a close game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's at least 4 straight years that Tennessee's lost a midweek game to an in-state team. Obviously, they lost back-to-back to Tennessee Tech in 22 and 23, and then I think it was Lipscomb, if I'm not mistaken, that got Tennessee last year.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember 21 as in detail. I probably would remember if they lost, but I do remember like they walked off Lipscomb, I want to say, in a game in 21. So it's not rare for these in-state games and midweeks to be competitive every now and then. So yeah, I didn't really read a ton into that. Granted, I wasn't there. I only caught the last two and change. I guess it ended up being whole 3 innings because went into the 10th inning when Tennessee lost. So I only watched a couple innings of it, but it was not something that just on the surface was an overly shocking result or anything like that. Just kind of the
No,
nature of the sport.
it set up perfectly for Tennessee to lose that game. Honestly, given the fact hard fought SEC series 20-0. I don't know. It just felt like a spot Tennessee could lose, and they did. And you have to credit Tennessee in that game for battling though, because Hunter Ensley has 2 big hits late. You got some key bullpen performances from Behnke, Krenzel, and even Tanner Franklin, who gave up the winning run. I thought looked much better, and then kind of parlayed that into a key out in the Bama series. But there were positive takeaways from that game, but like you said, not reading too much into that midweek loss. Look what happened. Tennessee still won a SEC series on the road after it. No panic button needed after a midweek loss like that, but people were definitely panicking a little bit. The sky was falling, Ryan, after a 6-5 series opening loss to Alabama, in which we saw Liam Doyle. We'll start here with the pitching as we always do. Um, be a little bit rattled early on because Alabama had a 5-run second inning and it looked like it was going to be a really long night for Tennessee. And in that second inning, after some defensive mistakes had occurred, the bases were loaded for Bama with no outs. Doyle issues back-to-back bases loaded walks. It's like, wow, this is very. I mean, I know Liam Doyle's command isn't always just the absolute greatest, and he gets deep into counts, but it was unlike Liam Doyle for him to lose composure a little bit like that for a second. Um, and while Tennessee could ultimately never overcome that 5-run second inning from Alabama, what Liam Doyle did after that, really from innings 4 through 6, was amazing in his ability to save the bullpen. And Tennessee only had to use Dylan Loy after him. So I thought while Liam Doyle, looked a little bit rattled early, was definitely the worst he'd looked all year long, his ability to bounce back after that and, kind of settle things was really good for Tennessee and ultimately assisted Tennessee greatly as you go on down the weekend. Because, like I said, they were able to save the bullpen after it looked like they definitely were not going to be able to do that early.
Yeah, I mean, it's something Tony Vitello talks about a good bit is how, every at bat, every inning over the course of a weekend or a tournament, when you get into the postseason, it builds on itself and it affects other things. I mean, I'll go back to game 2 of the Super Regional when Tennessee made that late push and made Evansville go to their one really good reliever to get out of game 2. And Tennessee, they stranded the bases loaded. They almost came back and won. They didn't. So in the end, on the scoreboard, it didn't change anything, but that completely changed the dynamic for game 3 the next day and what Evansville had available to use from a pitching standpoint. And this is the same thing in a 3-game series where, especially Tennessee's pitching staff, it feels like they're, I guess, on the back end of the bullpen on the weekend side. They're kind of still figuring some things out as to who they
Yeah.
trust and stuff like that. And so that was big for Doyle to push through. And I think it goes both ways. And this is the only game of the weekend that I wasn't able to watch. I guess the first maybe inning and a half or 2 innings of Friday's game, I couldn't get it to work on watch ESPN. But once I got that figured out, I watched the entire final 2 games. So I may be a little less educated on this, but just from afar, like it feels like to me, Doyle, it's 2 sides of the coin where it's like, yes, we've seen the command be a little bit of an issue or him not being overly efficient. Like that's something that I think you're just going to be monitoring with him consistently. But then on the other side, you said it, I think it's a really good sign that when things went awry, he didn't just crumble and he found a way to push deeper into the game and kind of bounce back after a bad inning. So, not to be too sunshine pumper or anything like that, but I think there were some positives in what was, as a whole, not a great outing for Doyle.
Yeah. And, like I said, really innings 4 through 6, Doyle didn't give up a run in any of those 3 innings. Worked around a couple of singles and a walk in 1 inning. Recorded a 1-2-3 in the 6th. So the only run he gave up after that disastrous second was in the 3rd, and that was because of another defensive mistake from Tennessee. The run that scored was because of an error that had been committed earlier. Um, well, it wasn't actually ruled an error, but Dean Curley should have made the play, in my opinion. It was a single to shortstop in the scorebook, but Dean Curley could have made that play, then a double, and then there's an RBI ground out. So another defensive woe, I guess, for Tennessee in the 3rd kind of led to that run, in my opinion. And of course, Manny Marin should have had a double play in the 2nd. That was definitely ruled an error. Would have that would have put 2 outs in the inning and only 1 runner on. No runs for Alabama yet in the inning. So only 1 on, 2 outs. Who's to say that Doyle doesn't get out of that inning just fine? And it's a scoreless inning for Alabama. So the defensive mistakes didn't help Doyle. Tony really hammered that on the in-game interview, and I guess there was no media afterwards. So really, just the in-game interview. Tony brought that up as like, hey, got to make plays behind him, and Tennessee didn't do a good job of that. So that led to things kind of spiraling maybe a bit for Doyle. But yeah, like I said, Doyle comes through and is able to bounce back after that. And I think that, maybe people won't recognize that as much as they should have because it really did save the bullpen. And Ryan, after Doyle was Dylan Loy, broadcaster's worst nightmare going from Doyle to Loy. Talk about a tongue twister.
The D-Loy.
Man, yeah. But man, Loy, yet again, Loy boys rise up. Another incredible relief outing. It's 3 up, 3 down in the 7th and 8th. There's no 9th inning to be pitched as Alabama was the home team. So retired all 6 of his batters, and Nate Snead is Tennessee's top bullpen arm, but it's definitely maybe a clear number 2 for Loy, maybe even a 1B given how important he's been over the past couple weeks. But he just continues to impress and show that he's one of the most important arms on this Tennessee staff.
No doubt. I think he's really submitted himself into guys that Tennessee trusts a lot, that Tony Vitello and Frank Anderson trust a lot, that you can go to in multiple spots. And he probably doesn't quite have the longevity. Maybe he does. We just haven't seen quite the consistent longevity like they've had Nate Snead do just a number of times. And it's not, I mean, I stopped myself short of saying Loy doesn't have it because I don't necessarily think that's true. I think he probably could do it. He just hasn't been asked to show it as much to this point. And I think it's particularly important. And as Tanner Franklin has had, he just a little bit more rocky start, I guess, to SEC play. And it's not just been SEC play, but he hasn't quite been. Whereas we left, or you literally, me figuratively left Houston being like, Houston being like, all right, Tanner Franklin's probably going to be able to give Tennessee 2 innings most Friday nights. Like, you can just pencil that in. He's going to be really good. Franklin could still easily get back to that. Would not be surprising in the slightest, but it's been a little bit more rocky for him. And because of that, I think that's just, it's opened up maybe less opportunity, but just expanded roles for potential other people. And Dylan Loy is really the one guy that I think's really taken that and run with it.
Yeah, and I know Tennessee lost the game, but Loy gave them a chance to win, right? Doyle bouncing back, Loy doing what he did. It was only a 1-run game in the end, and it's crazy how that game was. The story was just 1 inning. Like, that was the lead, man. It was, hey, Bama scored 5 in 1 inning, and Tennessee couldn't overcome it. And I thought Tennessee did a fine job of fighting, and had some opportunities late. A unfortunate double play that, of course, Twitter's like, how do you not bunt there? Well, it's Dalton Bargo. I don't recall Bargo really ever bunting in his Tennessee career, and it was just a weird spot. And then Abernathy getting caught stealing in the 9th. Just some unfortunate things happen for Tennessee offensively too. But yeah, that's how that game went. And I think as far as pitching goes, it definitely gave Tennessee a chance to win. Moving on to Friday night, Marcus Phillips starts, of course, looks really good early, runs into a little trouble there on the back end of his outing. So it looked from the first couple of innings like, okay, here we go. Marcus Phillips going to shove again, buckle up. But things he ran into trouble just kind of quickly there in his final couple of innings. Loy comes in, gets a massive out. Talking about Loy again, only recorded 1 out on the day, but it was a big one in a high leverage spot, which you can expect Loy to do a lot. And then we mentioned Nate Snead, just a vintage long relief outing for Nate Snead. Got hit around a little bit at the end, which led to Andrew Behnke and Tanner Franklin having to get the final 2 outs of the game. Behnke more of a matchup thing than Franklin getting the last out and the save. But, Snead, the final line, I guess, doesn't look that good, but, he kept Alabama at bay, and really until the very end, I thought he looked really good.
Yeah, I agree. It was kind of, I think Tennessee was hoping to get him to the finish line because at that point he'd thrown so much that, he was basically done for the weekend either way. So it's all right. Can you get to the finish line, get these last 3 outs, save the bullpen? And obviously the lead was pretty significant for Tennessee at that point. So yeah, he was definitely better than the numbers looked. It was, again, an outing where Tennessee kind of just handed him. I think you're going to see that a lot. They just kind of handed him the game and said, all right, take us as far as you can go. And in that time, Tennessee's offense was really good. So to me, even though the numbers don't look good, it felt a lot like business as usual for Nate Snead. And then Marcus Phillips, again, I think the numbers weren't bad, so I'm tentative to say better than the numbers looked. The numbers were solid.
Yeah.
But he just didn't really get hit around much. Like, I think all the hits, I could be wrong, I think all 4 hits he gave up were singles. I know in the innings when he gave up runs, it was a lot of single, stolen base, move a runner over with a ground out, stuff like that. A little bit more small ball that beat him. So it just felt like he avoided hard contact. And he gave up some runs. You would like to not see the walk. You'd like to not see the walks. You'd like to not see the hit by pitch. But as a whole, I thought Marcus Phillips was really solid. And obviously, he's 1 out away from being able to get the win.
Yeah, no, had a stolen base, error, RBI ground out there in the 3rd for Bama. and then you're right there in the fifth, just some singles led to a run. So I didn't think it was that bad for Marcus Phillips, and like I said early, it just looked really good. But yeah, business as usual, I guess you could say for Marcus Phillips. Um, Nothing. Just I didn't really have a lot of takeaways from Phillips's outing. It just was a little shorter than normal, I guess, than what we'll probably see. But yeah, I thought Phillips pitched fine and nothing big come out of it. I really want to hit on Tanner Franklin in this game. The Behnke appearance made a ton of sense to get an out there, and then for him to be pulled, I think it's just all matchup based thing for Tony. But Tanner Franklin, who, as I mentioned at the top of the pod, pitched against ETSU, was terrible against Florida. Against ETSU, gave up the winning run with a homer to ETSU's slugger Grant Gallagher. But outside of that, had retired all 5 of the other batters he faced. Thought he looked really sharp and a great bounce back from that Florida series. Comes in and gets the final out of a game with a ton of pressure, on him in that moment. So I thought him getting that out was really big. A long battle too against Will Plattner there, getting him swinging to end it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you were on it. You asked Tony about it on Tuesday. It seemed like he looked better against ETSU, and obviously, if you're just box score watching or the end result's not great, he gives up the home run to essentially lose the game. But it did feel like he was sharper there, and to me, it felt like he continued on, and it was, while it's a short outing, it did feel by that point in the game, it felt very, very high stakes. It felt
Tying
SEC
run at the plate.
weekend. Yep, SEC weekend. Kind of feels like Tennessee's maybe blowing this game a little bit, and against a good batter who had some success against Tennessee all weekend. So I think not only for him to just come in and see some positive results, for him to have some positive results, and that with the stakes raised, I guess the way that they was a good sign, and definitely another step in the right direction for Tanner Franklin, kind of getting back to that guy that he was in pre-SEC play for Tennessee.
And I guess with Andrew Behnke, he made his return against ETSU after a month-long absence. He had only pitched in the season opening series against Hofstra so far until that ETSU appearance. It was mostly solid in the midweek. Gets this out. Same deal with Franklin. 2 runners on, tying run at the plate. Both, it was 1 out though for Behnke, so maybe a little bit higher stakes. But I think Behnke's role, Ryan, will be similar to what it was last year, just a little bit more, right? He will be a specialist type of guy, really short appearances, but a guy that they trust and can go to in higher leverage spots. Maybe, we talked about how Loy seemed like the 2023 Kirby early because Tennessee wasn't giving him any extended relief. Now they are. I think Behnke is that guy to where he can get 1 or 2 outs in a given spot, and you're probably not going to see him go multiple innings, hardly at all.
Yeah, probably not. I think the question is more, does he get to the point where he maybe gets a full inning at some point?
Yeah.
Depending if it's, matchup or the bottom of the lineup or everything that goes into that. I think that's the question. I mean, I think he could work his way into that. Because again, it doesn't feel like after the first couple bullpen arms, a ton is ironed out for Tennessee right now. There hasn't been a ton of consistency. I think going into the season, I felt like Brandon Arvidsson would have been, at the top of the list of left-handed arms in the bullpen. It doesn't necessarily feel like he's that. So you have Doyle, obviously, as a lefty on Friday nights, and Dylan Loy's going to have a big role in it. But besides that, it feels like there's, at the very least, there's an opportunity for what you're saying, and what we think Behnke's floor probably is a 1 or 2 out specialist, lefty specialist. But just as a whole, I think there's opportunities for really anyone in Tennessee's bullpen, but maybe a little bit extra emphasis on left-handed arms because just the way some things have unfolded.
Talk about opportunity. Brayden Krenzel earned himself a big opportunity with the way he pitched against ETSU Tuesday night. Tennessee turns to him, first man out of the bullpen in Saturday's series clinching victory, and man, was Brayden Krenzel good. I mean, I know he was great against ETSU, but I don't think anyone could have expected this type of performance. Relieving Tegan Kuhns, gives up 3 hits, couple of runs, struck out 6, but he was better than even this final line indicated, which is really dang good. Krenzel really shut down Alabama for the vast majority of his outing. It was a great pitching day from this freshman duo of Tegan Kuhns and Brayden Krenzel. And this, to me, elevated Tennessee's ceiling as a pitching staff more than anything we've potentially seen all year. Kuhns looking this good in a road SEC start, the first of his career, third in general, and second SEC start. He's the real deal, in my opinion. I love watching him pitch, and I think you finally saw him a little bit more unleashed this weekend as Tony gave him the ball for a true start. It wasn't just an opener role like he'd been doing. But 71 pitches from Kuhns was great. 60 from Krenzel was great. This freshman duo got every out but one in this game as Tony was going pitcher to pitcher there to get the final out. It was just took forever there to get the final out. Franklin actually did get the final out yet again, but stakes weren't near as high, not going to be nearly as memorable. But Arvidsson and Combs couldn't, so Franklin was able to. But really, Kuhns and Krenzel are the story of the whole day of this 9-2 victory for Tennessee on Saturday.
No doubt. And like Kuhns, it wasn't surprising to me. I think we all knew he had the talent. We knew that at some point he was going to get a more longer opportunity, likely like it came as a starter. But even if not that, it was going to be a long relief outing where he got a chance in SEC play. So, I say that, I don't mean to minimize it, because he obviously took that opportunity and ran with it and was really, really good. And I don't even necessarily felt different coming into the weekend, but I'd say I leave it thinking he's one of the healthy pitchers Tennessee has right now, one of their, at the very worst, 5 best pitchers.
I would agree.
Heck, there's maybe a relatively significant drop off after those 5 when you're talking about the healthy ones.
Yep.
So I say all that, it just didn't shock me. It was really good. I don't mean to minimize it. I don't mean to make light of how good it was or how important that could be for Tennessee, especially while AJ Russell's not pitching. Krenzel, I just didn't see coming at all. That was so out of the blue for him to come in and be as good as he was. And he's a guy that's really talented and a guy that had some really good moments in the preseason. And I remember going back to our preview pod, I think I mentioned him, him and Ryan Combs as guys kind of in the same category of, all right, does he grab a real opportunity here? And for most of the season, it's been limited opportunities and certainly not in big moments. So for him to come in and then just dominate and then the SEC game out of the bullpen was just like, whoa, he has the talent, but I didn't see that coming. And to me, that's, up there amongst the biggest stories of the weekend.
No doubt. I mean, he had pitched 4 1/3 going into the midweek game against ETSU all year. He'd been to 8th or 9th inning guy on midweeks. He wasn't even getting majority of midweek reps. He wasn't even one of the top arms to pitch in midweek games. And then, he gets an opportunity against ETSU, probably by default, as it's a quick turnaround with the series coming up. Tony had thrown a ton of guys already, so Krenzel was kind of the top option remaining unless you wanted to go to Combs, who ended up kind of giving the game away. And then Krenzel shoves in that, so he earns this opportunity and makes the absolute most of it. I think he really got himself a potentially big-time role in the bullpen for Tennessee. Right now, you look at Snead and Loy as the top 2 arms, part of that top 5 you mentioned. Arvidsson hasn't taken the bull by the horns at all. I think Franklin, there's still a lot of high hopes for. Maybe he can be a more late game guy than a 6th through 8th inning guy. Maybe he's more destined for, like I said, 9th innings. But, with Krenzel being able to do this on the road, man, this is first true big time appearance for him. Yeah, it's just hard to put into words how surprising it was and how valuable it could be for Tennessee right now, where it looked like things weren't obviously falling apart for this pitching staff, but I think the upside of it was going down over the past couple of weeks, given Franklin's struggles, given the fact that Arvidsson hasn't really done much. Ryan Combs doesn't look to be very reliable right now. So a lot of guys maybe we were high on or thought could record very valuable innings for Tennessee and SEC play, those expectations maybe weren't as good. And now Krenzel doing this kind of replaces all that doubt.
Yeah. I'm tentative to go quite that far off of one outing, but no, I mean, you're right. The way you're framing it
It
is
gives them
accurate.
another option that you can
Yes.
rely on.
Yes, it gives another option that looks realistic. Whereas before, if this weekend you would have said Brayden Krenzel, big weekend opportunity, is like, what are you talking about? To your
Yeah.
point, he's pitched 4 1/3 innings before the midweek game. It's like, yeah, I mean, next year probably a really good really good weekend bullpen option, but I don't really see it right now. And just because you did it once doesn't mean it's a guarantee. But you have a proof of concept, and it was really, really good. And kind of to your point, it almost felt like to me that you're waiting on AJ Russell. Like it kind of had
Yeah.
like, all right, this pitching staff needs 15 outs from AJ Russell a weekend, and that would fix a lot of its problems.
Mhm.
Um, and there's still an aspect of that that's true, and would certainly go a long way. But Krenzel is another good option, and you think you pair Krenzel being an option with. I still think Kuhns can get valuable outs. We talked about Behnke, Tanner Franklin ceiling is still super, super high. It just is another option, and it makes it more feasible that some things can get figured out, and Tennessee can piece the puzzle together well.
Yep. Kuhns is the best freshman arm because he's starting and he looks good, but I think outside of that, you got to give the nod to Krenzel and what he's been able to do, and maybe even newcomers in general, outside in the bullpen, right? Because Snead and loyal returners, but in the bullpen, as far as newcomers go, Krenzel's been one of the most impressive, specifically as of late. But that'll wrap up the pitching discussion. Eventful weekend for Tennessee there, but offensively, Ryan, I thought, talking about just doubt for Tennessee, I think the most doubt was with this offense going into this series, given the fact that wasn't great in the Florida series. ETSU found some life late, and then in the series opener wasn't able to mount as big of a comeback as you needed. So the offense had a little bit of doubt with it, I think, going into games 2 and 3, and a lot of that was silenced with 19 runs across the 2 games. Hunter Ensley has been the big time player for Tennessee at the plate as of late, hit 500 on the weekend. His numbers in the last 7 games are absurd. I don't have them in front of me, but dude has been raking for the Vols. So we'll start there. Just Hunter Ensley's, hot streak at the plate and how valuable he's been in that 3-hole for Tennessee.
Yeah, he's just been Mr. Steady, I think, more than anything. Like, he doesn't feel like he's doing a ton that's spectacular offensively, but he's been really, really reliable and really, really solid, and I think that's almost what you want to see. He ended, I don't know how long that stretch was, 6 or 7 weeks last year in the season on just an unbelievable tear.
Mm-hmm.
That was long enough to, it wasn't a fluke by any means, but it didn't necessarily feel like he could replicate it, to me at least, over the course of a full season. Like that, it was just insane how well he was doing. To where I think you're seeing, like, he's obviously still incredibly capable of having a stretch like that again for a month or however long, but to see what more the baseline is, what's steady Hunter Ensley, and I think steady Hunter Ensley has been good enough to hit in the 3-hole for Tennessee, which is something that I wasn't sure of. I wasn't sure he ended up in the 3-hole long term, and now leaving the second SEC series, I feel like that's probably how it's going to happen. Tennessee's probably going to enter the postseason with Hunter Ensley hitting in the 3-hole, and he just had another really good weekend. It feels like, as you'd expect, he's been really clutch. He's had a lot of big hits and big moments in just 2 SEC series to this point. Had a big hit, if I'm not mistaken, in the ETSU game, when it was very
2
up
of
in
them.
the air. 2 of them.
Tied the game and took the lead.
Yeah, so he's just very, very reliable. I feel like I was thinking, this just popped back into my head. I was thinking about, this is going to be such a niche reference that most people are not going to get it. There's a Curb Your Enthusiasm scene where Larry's he answers the phone at dinner, and I guess they're talking about Derek Jeter, and he's talking to a stonemason who's doing the gravestone for his mom. And the guy's like, Derek Jeter, he's so overrated. He's ripping him in. Larry's like, you a-hole, no, he's a fantastic defensive shortstop and one of the clutch hitters. And I was thinking about that after one of Hunter Ensley's hits this weekend, and I was like, he's Larry David talking about Derek Jeter. He's an incredible defensive center fielder, and he's an incredibly clutch hitter. He's maybe not spectacular at the plate, but he's an incredible clutch hitter. So any curb heads out there maybe remember that scene. But that I had that thought with Hunter Ensley this weekend. He just feels steady and like in clutch moments, he's going to be really good.
Yeah. No, I think like I said, if there was any doubt about him in that 3-hole, it's really been silenced in the last week and a half. And he's been one of the key bats in this lineup. And, like I said, 19 runs in 2 games. The numbers are going to look good on the weekend for Tennessee, and they do for multiple guys. And I think arguably the biggest story, and this has been a story of the last couple of weeks for Tennessee, is what Dalton Bargo has been able to do at the plate. Hit 455 on the weekend, 2 huge RBI hits in Friday's game. That'll be game 2 was Friday, and then backed it up with another nice day. Nice is underselling it, actually. Had another really nice day in Saturday's series clinching victory. So 2 hits apiece in each of those games, and actually
for the
had
cycle
across the 2.
Across the 2 games, he pinch hit in his ensuing 4 at bats, 2 to end that game, and then 2 to start the next game. He hit for the cycle.
Right. Yeah, because the triple, I remember that. Obviously, the homer. Yeah. So
Bargo, double. I think it went double, single, triple homer. I think.
Okay. Yeah, because he hit the triple and homer. Right. The homer came after Vaughn got tossed. Yeah. So big weekend for Bargo, and it comes while Levi Clark is really struggling. He's on a 2 for 20 slump at the plate with 10 strikeouts, I believe, is the count now after Saturday. He didn't play at all on Saturday. Sorry, after Friday. He didn't play at all on Saturday. I'm getting my days mixed. I hate these Thursday through Saturday things.
They throw off the rhythm so much.
Absolutely sucks. But Dalton Bargo really making the most of his opportunities and kind of looked like the odd man out there for a while. Now I think it's a full-fledged discussion of who's Tennessee's top DH moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. And, not only they were all big hits this weekend. It wasn't, like he was hitting big hits up by 8 runs or something like that in a game. I mean, I think all of them were 3 of them were RBIs, and then the triple led off an inning, and he scored on the very next pitch on a sac fly. So his bat is more what I think I expected coming, or at least when we were talking about him in the offseason, of like I just had a trust level that he would figure it out and be good, and he's making it really interesting. And obviously the fact that he fits so many different places. I mean, I think we said that even when he was struggling, that he would continue to get opportunities because he can do so many things that naturally people are going to struggle at those spots, and he's going to get some opportunities, and he's certainly taking them and running with them. And yeah, I thought the home run after the Vaughn ejection, I thought was a big moment because I don't know what Rob Vaughn was doing or his logic, but like it kind of felt like he was maybe trying to fire up the team. Like,
yeah. Okay. So I don't know. It looked to me like he thought Andrew Fisher took too long going around the bases. Maybe Fisher did something to the dugout. I don't know, going home. But it looked to me like he was already mad about that. And then he thought the catcher caught the ball, but it's clearly foul and hit dirt. So there was no disputing that. But he was mad about that. I think he was mad about Fisher, which kind of led to things snowballing. And yeah, I also am agreeing with you there that he maybe felt like he needed to fire up the team a little bit and just went obviously way too overboard.
Yeah, he went haywire for sure. And Dalton Bargo just like slammed the door shut. I mean, obviously neither of us were there, but it felt like that place was really juiced up. Was a massive crowd there for that Saturday game, and there just wasn't really much for Alabama to get up about until the very end of the game. They obviously had a nice ninth inning, and the game was over at that point. And so that was kind of a point that everybody was up and fired up, and for Bargo to immediately hit that home run, it just felt like an inflection point, I guess, in the game where it was like, all right, that kind of felt like Tennessee baseball in your face. Like, obviously there was nothing demonstrative about it, but just like, we're gonna beat you up. That kind of was what that Dalton Bargo at bat in that moment felt like.
Yeah, so much for your momentum, right? That was that. Just watch this. Absolute wreck a baseball out to right field. After Andrew Fisher had destroyed a baseball to center, 416, I think, 420, something like that, feet. It was a monstrous homer, but back-to-back jacks for Tennessee there in the Saturday victory. But yeah, big weekend for Bargo. I think we can expect to see more of him going forward. It'll probably come at the expense of Levi Clark, who's just striking out too much right now. Tony kind of mentioned he's just going to. I don't want to misquote him, but it's up on Rack Top Insider. Just what's been troubling Levi Clark at the plate. Like I said, don't want to misquote him, but Tony just talked about his struggles a little bit and how it's just not been the same last couple weeks for Clark. Speaking of big developments for Tennessee in that Saturday victory, how about Ariel Antigua with a 3-hit day in that win, getting the start at shortstop for the second straight day with Gavin Kilen banged up. It creates opportunities for Ariel at short, moving around the infield a bit, Manny at second, and Ariel making the most of his opportunities at the plate in the weekend. Had a 1 hit on Friday, 3 on Saturday. And if Ariel can hit like this, if he can give you pretty much just anything out of that 9-hole at the plate, then he should be starting every day because the defense is there. And then some. He's the best defender Tennessee has. And what a 3-hit day for Ariel. His best game as of all, no question.
Yeah, and I think even expanding on it, I thought he was really good in the Friday game. 1 for 4 with a walk, but just productive. Get on base a couple of times, to your point, and play that defense, and he's a real plus for Tennessee. So, yeah, I mean, quite the development, especially, I mean, for him to hit a double. It doesn't feel like he's had many extra base hits in his Tennessee career.
I think he had 1 all of last year.
Yeah. So it's just like you said, a development that kind of changes the dynamic a little bit, or at least alters it to this point. Maybe changes isn't quite accurate, but especially when you talk about Bargo being able to play that infield too. Obviously not at the same level that Ariel can, but it's just, again, there's just a lot of moving pieces for this team, and figuring out how they all fit, I think, continues to kind of be interesting as you see some guys struggle in SEC play, and now a couple guys that were on the outside looking in really making the most of some opportunities.
What was more surprising, Krenzel's outing or Ariel's day at the plate?
That's a good question. I think it's Ariel's day at the plate. Just how
more surprising?
Yeah, I think so. Like,
I don't know, man. Freshman pitcher who hasn't even faced an SEC team yet on the road. I mean, both are really surprising, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're probably right. Objectively, you're probably right. I don't know, but just for Ariel to be that dominant at the plate, like, and he's been like good at times when I've watched him in scrimmages, so it's not like he's a bad hitter. But I don't know if I've ever seen him have a day like that where, it was like all the at bats felt really long, really competitive, and fouling off a bunch of pitches. Like, he was just an absolute pest, and was making a lot of hard contact on top of it.
Had 5 assists on the day too, defensively. So really huge day. And okay, follow-up question to the Ariel Krenzel thing. Which one do you think is more likely to continue? Like Krenzel being a reliable bullpen arm who can give you 3 to 4 innings, or Ariel being a guy who can have 1 multi-hit day a weekend? And just be solid at the plate. Let's call it solid. Solid enough to where you never have to think twice about him starting in a game.
All right, I'm gonna cheat. The way you described it, I would say Ariel. But if it's Krenzel like giving them an inning in a weekend, I would probably lean Krenzel. And part of that's just the opportunity aspect of it. Like, I think if you stuck Ariel in there for a full season, and it's like he's the starting shortstop, yeah, I think he could do that. But I just think, and that's not a knock that Tennessee should do that, or that's what they need to do, or they're sliding Ariel Antigua. I don't think any of that's true. It's just there's a lot of really good options there, and I think other guys are going to continue to get chances. Whereas chances are so valuable in Tennessee's lineup. Whereas on the pitching staff, and this is just the nature of college baseball, there's going to be opportunities. Like, almost certainly, there's going to be opportunities for guys most weekends. Unless everything in the pitching plan goes perfect, something's going to pop up, and there's going to be an opportunity for a guy that's kind of on the fringe. So just by the very nature of that, I think it's probably Krenzel if you're talking about, one inning pitched on a weekend. It's good. 3 or 4 to replicate what he did on Sunday. I think it's got to be Ariel, because that's just a ton to ask out of a freshman.
No, all fair. And, looking at some other players for Tennessee at the plate on the weekend, Andrew Fisher had a couple of homers. He's now at 9 on the season, just one behind Kilen for tying the team lead. So nice weekend for him, hit over 400. How about 5 players hitting? I know Ariel only played in 2 games, but so really 4 who played all 3 hitting over 400 on the weekend. Really impressive stuff. Dean Curley, one of those as well, had a big moment in Friday's win with a 2-run homer. So he's now had back-to-back weekends where he's at least, had a pretty big moment. It's maybe not the most consistent for Dean, but he has delivered in some moments as well. Reese Chapman had another homer as well. His power continues to be really big for Tennessee. Jay, not the best Friday and Saturday, but had a 3-hit day on Thursday. So I still think he can be reliable. Manny and Cannon were the only 2, of course, Levi, but Manny and Cannon didn't have the best of weekends at the plate. Neither did Stone in his lone start. So, a couple of duds on the weekend for Tennessee offensively. Obviously, that's going to happen. But I'll kind of lump Manny in just with the second base spot thing that's going on with Tennessee, with Gavin Kilen obviously out right now, and who knows how long it will take him to return to action. Tony Vitello said on Saturday that it's slowly getting better. Of course, this is referring to Keelan's hamstring injury, which are always tricky. Vitello said it's probably at least an 8, 9, 10-day thing. So as I mentioned, we'll first look at the ability to maybe pinch hit and then maybe just hit. So that would be, of course, pinch hit, then a DH situation for Keelan, and then hopefully getting back on the field after that. So we'll see if Keelan will be ready to go for any game in the South Carolina series. I would probably say not going to start at second base any game in Columbia, but could DH at some point. But going to be a process getting Keelan back, as this coaching staff definitely doesn't want to take any risks with an injury like a hamstring.
No, definitely not. I think 2 thoughts on that. One on just a direct fallout. Like, I think the way Ariel played, I think to me, it's pretty simple that he's got to be the guy at short, and you move Manny to second and Curley to third. I think would be my plan if I was Tennessee while he's out, and I would probably give it a little bit of trust or lack of deviation, I guess. Wouldn't be super reactionary to immediate results, and then 2, and something I'm glad you brought up Kilen, because it's something, just a point I wanted to make in general. Ariel was really good. Bargo was really good. But to me, on the weekend where Tennessee didn't have one of its best hitters, those other guys in the top of the lineup really stepped up. I thought Dean Curley was really good. We've talked about Ensley and Fisher, man. It just feels like right now for him, it's a lot of walks, so many walks, so many competitive
6
at
walks.
bats.
I didn't mention that. 6 walks.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. 6 walks in, I believe, 13 plate appearances, unless I'm missing something. So, sac fly too. So 14 plate appearances, 6 walks, and then obviously two home runs that he hit a very, very long way. So when Tennessee was down one of its top bats, they had guys at the bottom step up, or guys kind of in new roles or new opportunities because of that with Bargo and Ariel. But at the same time, the guys that you expect to be Tennessee's best hitters also picked up the slack and had big weekends.
I also thought Jay hitting second made a ton of sense, because with Dean leading off, Tennessee's going to want a lefty there. And with what Fisher and Chapman can do with their power, I thought it made a lot of sense for Abernathy to hit second. And he's been pretty dang consistent too.
Yeah, he has been. Again, it just feels like he's such a high floor. It just feels like something good's going to happen with him in there. And obviously, I felt like that play where he got called for the runner's interference was kind of the perfect example of that, before he got called for runner's interference. Of
Such
just
a weird play.
Yeah, it was. Just he can make something happen at any time. And again, it's like you said, it's been just kind of a steadiness from him. And even going back to the fall, the way Tony Vitello talked about him, it doesn't feel like this is a guy that you flip him in the batting order or you flip his role a little bit, it's going to bother him. He's just going to go out there and compete and play.
Yep. And going back to Keelan just real quick, it's, given what Ariel did, it's really hard to be concerned right now about what Tennessee's going to be able to do offensively without Kilen. Because look what they did, scoring 19 runs in 2 games. So, like, I think a popular question or talking point will be, how is Gavin Keelan's absence going to affect Tennessee moving forward if it's going to last another week and a half? I think what you saw is that if Ariel can do that, it's going to affect them in a sense as far as upside goes, but Bargo doing what he did and Ariel doing what he did, those are massive developments with Keelan being out.
Yeah, I think it's similar to last year when Billy Amick was out for 2 weeks with the appendectomy. Like, yeah, obviously it hurts. It's a really good player. It affects your ceiling, but Tennessee has the depth that losing a key bat in the lineup, and it's not quite to the degree it was last year, but losing a key bat in the lineup, like that's just not going to sink Tennessee or anything. Like, they're good enough to still win games without some key players, especially when we talk about the lineup.
There you have it. A 2-1 weekend for Tennessee to improve to 22-2 on the season. As I mentioned, still number 1 in 4 of 5 polls. Play Kuhns on Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern time in LNS before hitting the road again for a 3-game series against South Carolina. Ryan, any last notes before we wrap up here?
Yeah, just on this next week, Queens, I think they're at 4 wins on the season, if I'm not mistaken. When I looked at the game notes earlier this afternoon, I could be off a little bit, but it's not many wins. I know that. So less of an upset threat than ETSU was last week. And then a South Carolina team that's struggled to this point in the year. So rarely is an SEC series, especially an SEC road series, an easy one. But I do think this is one that Tennessee will go on the road and win, and wouldn't be surprised if they swept.
Gotcha. Well, there you have it. If you want to follow Ryan, you can do so at rshump00. You can follow me at Jack Foster Media, and of course, follow Rocky Top Insider at Rocky Top Insider on all social media platforms. And of course, stay up to date with all of your Tennessee athletics coverage needs on RockyTopInsider.com, including live at-bat by at-bat update threads for every single Tennessee baseball game. And with hoops heading to Indy this weekend for some Sweet 16 action, you'll definitely want to follow along for all things there, playing the Cats in round 3. It's going to be a heck of a weekend there in Indy, or at least one game for sure in Indianapolis, as Tennessee looks to reach its 2nd consecutive Elite 8. But Ryan and Rick Butler will have you guys covered there. We want to say something?
No, I didn't have anything. I was thinking, do you have a favorite Jaguars moment in Lucas Oil Stadium?
I mean, no, because most of Jacksonville's wins over Indy last couple of years have come in
Jacksonville.
Yeah. I don't even know if they may have swept the Colts 2 years ago with Trevor. I don't know if they did or not, but the win to prevent Indianapolis from making the playoffs in Trevor's rookie year was electric against Carson Wentz, and that happened in Jacksonville. Since then, there haven't really been many huge Jacksonville-Indianapolis games. And of course, I'm a fake Jags fan anyway. I'm just a Trevor guy, but it's not like I can go back to, the 20 teens or anything.
Yeah, you don't have any Maurice Jones-Drew or Blake Bortles memories.
No, I was rooting for the Colts and the Broncos then. Peyton Manning.
Okay.
Sheriff.
There you go. Happy birthday, Sheriff.
Absolutely. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Rocky Top Insider Diamond Pass. For Ryan, I'm Jack. We'll see you next time.